BJCP. So BJCP is the Beer Judging Certification Program. It's been around as long as I have, since '85. And it's the oldest recognition for beer evaluation. So there's really two main ones. You probably heard of the Cicerone program, Master Cicerone. That's more commercial side. It's more on selling of beer and pairing with food and that kind of stuff. And the BJCP is more focused on home brewing and that type of brewing style. I've included the goals, partly because when you're doing a judging, you should be conscious of the goals of the program while we're providing feedback, right? It's not just about winning awards and having bragging rights. It's about encouraging other people to brew and growing the home brewing community, helping them learn, helping them understand what they did well, what they've done wrong, how they can improve, and that kind of thing. And also included it because if you ever take the test, there's a question, and that's one of them. You need to know those three things by word. So just the process if you ever want to take the test. So I've taught a course for BOCK a couple times now, and I'll do it again if you get enough interest. You probably need about 20 people that want to sit it. It's usually 9 months to a year process. The tests are scheduled way out in advance. We try to schedule one local, and then we teach for that. So we can do that again if there's enough interest. If you find yourself wanting to do this, let me know after. If we get enough interest, we'll start gearing up towards it again. But the way it works now, so it used to work different. The way it works now, there's an online entrance exam. It's about 200 questions. You have a limited amount of time to do them, and you have to score like 75 or something. This entrance exam is the hardest part of getting started. The first time we did that course, I didn't take the entrance exam when I did it. It was different. Getting people past that point so they can sit the tasting exam was the hardest part. It's a convoluted test where they do a bunch of multiple choice, multiple answers, and it can be difficult. So you may have to prepare to take it a few times, but that really is the hard part. After that, there's a tasting exam, where you'll come in on usually Saturday morning, and you'll taste 6 beers, and you'll fill out your score sheets for those 6 beers. There'll be 3 national or higher proctors who are in another room doing the same thing. The scores are a combination of how well you did on yours as far as filling it out, and the words you used, how you wrote it, how you described it, that kind of stuff. If you were accurate to what the proctor says was on the test, right? So there's somebody who sets the test up and says this is what that was supposed to be. And then there's a little portion of it that's how you scored compared to the other judges who did the test. So there's 3 national people that take it. Honestly, almost everybody scores these high enough to be recognized the first time they take it. It's not that hard to get on the course. And most people score, when we've done it, score probably in the certified range on the first go around. So the tasting exam it's really about experience. It's about just sitting down and doing it, getting used to doing it. It's kind of a speed test a little bit because you got a certain amount of time, but it's really not that bad. If you wanted to get national or above, then there's a written exam. There's 10 essay questions. I've got the topic on the next slide, I think, but that was a big deal. It used to be you had to take them both together, and they've changed that. So you don't have to do national, or you don't have to do the written exam unless you really want to progress. So that's the phase 2. That's a whole different process. And then the written exam. So topics on the exam process. There's going to be questions around the brewery competitions, ethics, the processes, that kind of stuff. There'll be questions about the style guideline, which is we compare and contrasting, talking about the different styles. Some of it's memorization on the styles. Troubleshooting, recipe formulation, the process of brewing, all the ingredients involved. So there's one question that's detailed, like ingredient question, right? About hops or water or yeast or malt. And they're pretty scientific, especially the essay one. The questions on the written exam cover the same topics, but on the entrance exam, on the written essay exam, it's a page essay on water chemistry or hop chemistry or whatever, so it's quite a thing. And there's also some questions around your history, geographical styles, so the things that were made in certain regions for certain reasons. So there's a lot of topics. We do the class, I cover all of the basic stuff that you'll run into. Not to say it's all quick study. So that's kind of what you see on the exam. Ranking system, I won't go into too much detail here, but basically you have to score a composite score on tasting and written if you want to go national or above, it's high enough, and you have to have experience points. So the good thing is if you judge our competition, you'll get put in a system with an experience point even before you do all this. So if you come in 2 years and take the test, that experience point will count. So if you're interested at all, if you judge the Bluegrass Cup this year, you'll get a point in the right direction. Some of this stuff. So one more positive. And then there's much different levels, but and the further ones take all kinds of other stuff to get involved in it. I'm not going to never do, but they're there if you're interested. All right, so what are the goals of judging? When you're judging a beer, the primary goal, right? We are not it's not about bragging rights, not about awards, it's about giving feedback. It's about telling the brewer what they've done well, what they can do better, how they can improve, but positively, right? We're encouraging each other. We want this to be a learning experience. We want them to get valuable information out of the process. So always the first goal is give good feedback, be positive. Right? It doesn't do anybody any good to be like, oh, your beer tastes like raw sewage, and move on. Like, it doesn't help them. All it does is just discourage them from brewing the next time. Try to avoid assumptions when you're doing it. Right? Not everybody brews the same. Sometimes some things may not apply if you're doing an extract compared to all grains. So try to be try to avoid assumptions if you can. Talk about overall offering suggestions. Be constructive, not negative. When you're filling it out, make sure that you're consistent. So if you talk about how great it smells at the top and at the bottom, you say it's terrible and give it a 2, then that's not consistent, and you're giving mixed messages, and that's not helpful. So you got to think about being consistent, and then be thorough as possible. The more stuff you can write, the more helpful it is to people. The more feedback you're getting, the more information you're getting. From a test perspective, it's really important. But even from a competition perspective, they're paying an entry fee to get their beer evaluated by us, and we want to provide them a product for that, right? We want to provide them information, and we want to provide them help, and give them feedback. So we don't want one word on each line, so it's not particularly helpful. All right, preparing to judge. So going to competition, there's 3 things you need to be looking at. On the personal level, make sure you read the style guidelines before you start. I will try to have assignments done Friday night. So you should know the night before what styles you'll judge. Now, when you sign up, you can put in there which styles you want to judge and which ones you don't want to judge, and you can be real specific about it. If you I know my Belgian Trappist ales, and that's the only thing I want to judge, you can check that, that's what you'll get assigned to, unless you have it. But in general, most people they only have a few they won't judge or a few they like, and you get assigned. So you should know hopefully the night before, and I reserve the right to change that morning of when people don't show up. But you should know, so take a few minutes, read through the guidelines. When you sit down, you'll have a stack of score sheets. We prevent stickers, so you can put stickers on them, get them all ready to go, so you prepare, so you're ready to go when the judging starts. Things to avoid. Don't eat spicy food in the morning if you can help it. It doesn't like hot sauce on rice, but that'll screw up your taste in your olfactory. Don't wear heavy colognes, don't wear perfumes. You want to be neutral as possible. Have deodorant that doesn't have an odor, that's even better. We usually try to bring hand soap that doesn't have scents in it, that kind of stuff. So it's important to try to be as neutral as possible. Try to be hungover. I understand it's not always possible. Saturday morning, I get it. But try to be hungover. If you're try not to smoke if you can help it. If you're a smoker, make sure you go outside, away from everybody else when you smoke. Wash your hands when you come back in. Try to make it as clean as possible. I also suggest you avoid antihistamines. If you're a regular person, you take it every morning for your allergies. It's okay because it's already in your system. But if you're not, it's best not to take it because it actually blocks your olfactory and makes it harder to. Location. So we do our competition at Shrewsbury Hall, which is a really great location for everything except light. So we don't hit people with free. But we try to keep it odor free. We keep the food separate as much as possible. Don't bring food to the table. Don't bring your coffee to the table. Finish it up before you come. Get a glass of water. Wash the coffee out your breath before you start. Ideally, you'd have a pretty neutral setting, a white tablecloth with well-lit rooms, so you can really get the color and perception of what the beer looks like. We're not perfect, but for a free location as good as it is, we put up with the lighting problem. And ideally, it'd be a low noise, low distraction kind of place. So we separate us. We don't do it in a bar with a bunch of people in it. It's all separated. We'll be by ourselves. The people that are doing the tabulations and paperwork and all the food prep are in another room, so we keep it quiet and separated. Equipment. You want to do a pencil, preferably mechanical, so you don't get the wood smells, because that can conflict with some of the beer stuff. We provide mechanical pencils, a little bag over here if you want to fill out a score sheet in a minute. Clear plastic cups, which again the competition will provide. We have a cup we like, I think we get it from Costco, it's really nice. Dump buckets, bottle opener, paper towels, everything you need to keep stuff clean. We'll also provide a palate cleanser, so we usually do unsalted saltine crackers, bottles of water, and that kind of stuff. Sometimes you'll see bread, different things in competition. Just something that you can use to break up the monotony of what you're tasting. Alright, process of judging then. So the very first thing you want to do, the most fleeting part of the beer is the aroma. As soon as that beer pours, there's stuff going out of the glass. Right? The head's coming up, the CO2 is popping out. The very first thing you want to do is smell it. See what you're picking up on the nose. Swirl it around. Some people bring a cover. You can use a coaster, cover the glass up, swirl it a little bit, smell it right away. That helps to get that first hit of what's in that beer. As it will change as it warms. So you may want to warm it up, you may want to keep swirling, always go back to it, but start with the smell. Second, you typically check appearance. You can hold it up to the light. Some people bring a little flashlight to look at it to see the color, so you can get the color, the clarity, the head retention, that kind of stuff. Then, after you do all of that, you then move into the taste. So you do that stuff first, then come to taste, because the taste will is a factor of all those things together, right? Sam's not here, but he'd be the person talking. You have the brain guy. Your eyes and your nose play a large portion of what you taste, so there's an impact to that. So you taste last. After you tasted it, you do body and mouthfeel, and then you go down to the end and do your evaluation. So it works down the score sheet. If you look at the score sheets in the back of the PowerPoint or get one of the examples, you'll see it's kind of laid out that way for a reason. So as you're going through it, it's important to make notes at every stage. Write down what you're tasting, what you're smelling, what you're seeing, and as you go through it, you usually want to circle back and kind of do it again, right? Because after you've done it once, you think about it a little bit, you start trying to articulate what you're tasting, what you're smelling. Sometimes it changes a little bit. It'll open up when it's warm, or it'll maybe there's a sulfur note, but it goes away after the beer's open for a second, right? And you can know those things. It's important to know those things because this impacts the overall quality of the beer, right? If it's sulfur and it's just always sulfur, that's a bigger negative than, okay, there's a little sulfur when it opened up, but then it dissipated, right? So those things are negligible maybe to just drinking a beer, but when you're judging, it's an important distinction. It could make a difference between a winning beer and a not winning beer, right? Or maybe cost 2 or 3 points difference. So, but again, always be thinking about constructives. We want to provide help. We want to tell them what they can do better, how they can improve, what they've done well, right? Why compliments. And think about the score. So this is why I go back to making sure everything's consistent. As you're going through it, start thinking about where you think that beer needs to land. And we'll talk about the rating in a minute, but if you think it's pretty good, then it's going to be in this certain range, and your scores all should sort of fit into that. So it's good to be thinking about it as you go through. And when we do that, of course, I kind of talk about my process personally, but everybody kind of has their own style to it a little bit. So that's the general process. Good question. Kind of blowing through this quick so we can get to the paper.
Can you tell me what legs means?
Legs is a usually what people refer to legs is floral, like a Belgian beer that kind of sticks to the side of the glass, and you can see the alcohol sometimes. And that's what they usually mean when you talk about legs. Lasting head, that kind of like foam. Yeah.
Lacing.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
All right. So the evaluation process. So this is not what you prefer. This is supposed to be scored objectively. Now I know it's not always possible to put aside your personal preferences, but that is the goal. This is much like a dog show competition, if you've ever seen one of those, where there's like different groups, and then the winners all face each other at the end. So the first round is what's the best IPA, or what's the best English ale, or what's the best Belgian ale, and then at the end we'll do a best of show with everything. But you're supposed to judge it as its category, right? So if you don't like IPAs and you get put on IPAs, you can't just say they're all terrible because they're too bitter because you don't like bitter beers, right? Now, hopefully, if you're that negative on that style, you've told me you don't want to judge it. But it's not always easy, right? And sometimes you'll get a category maybe that has flavor additions. Like I hate cucumbers, and I've judged spicy vegetable beers, and I had to judge cucumber, and I hate it. But I have to put that aside and say, okay, well, the cucumber in this is really pretty good if you like cucumber. It's hard to do, but you gotta be objective. Avoid biases. Again, I hate cucumbers. I hate lactose in beer. I have a lot of personal preferences that I put aside if I judge, and I usually sign up to just judge whatever they need me to put in because I can judge just about anything. And I don't have any issue with it. So it's just you gotta put it aside though when you do that. Always be constructive. Always provide comments, positive comments. We want these people to brew again, right? Even if it's terrible, we want them to come out of this going, you know what? I know I screwed this one up, but now I know what I can do to fix it. And what I can do better. I want to do it again. Yes, sir.
Aren't you always judging against what you think is the best, like the best IPA you ever had, or the best English ale you ever had?
You're supposed to judge the guidelines, not to what's the best. Now, the guidelines are rewritten periodically. I'll bring them up in a minute. They are rewritten every so often. The goal is to reflect what's currently considered the classic style. So they do change, they do adapt over time. And if There are people who have been brewing a very long time who will see that and they get very put off when their favorite, old German lager style allows for something that they didn't think should be allowed. Because that's how it's made these days. So that but you are supposed to judge to the guideline, not to what your perception of it is, what the guideline says. So there are certain things that are, there are certain things where sometimes the guidelines are actually quite different than what people think. A good example that's American Pale Ale. Most people think American Pale Ale, and they just think, oh, it's a small IPA, because that's what most commercial American Pale Ales are. Right? They brewed an IPA, then they knocked it down to 5%. It's bitter and it's not made with no malt. But that's not really what a Pale Ale is supposed to be. So sometimes that's why it's important before you judge to reread it, make sure that you're familiar with what the style guidelines are.
So the idea is that we are familiar with those guidelines once we know what we're judging, is what you're
Yes.
saying,
Yes.
right? And those are out there somewhere.
Correct. They're on the bjsp.org website.
Gotcha.
You can download that. There's also apps for Apple and Android that are really handy. We have a printed copy that we provide. Are we using the 2015 again? Is that either one more time? We got the 2015 guidelines. There's a 2021 guideline that just came out. Which is going to be nice printed books. We're going to use 15 one more time. So you'll have a copy of the table you can look at. And so you can go back and refresh. But it's important because, if you're taking the test, you've got to have a lot of it memorized, at least to some level, to be able to do well in the exam. So some of it you'll know, but it's easy to, okay, I'm drinking the best bitter and, compare it to English Pale Ale. I'm like, okay, well, what's the difference? And so there's a lot of nuance involved. So it's always important to not think you know what it is and refresh yourself, even if you've been doing it a long time. Yes, Jeff?
The other thing that we put in there is at the bottom, they'll put what they call beers that represent that style well.
Yes.
And so if you had that beer, it's like, oh, that's what that's supposed to taste like.
I will say, from the commercial styles, they try to list some that are readily available, but a lot of the real classic European style beers and English, some of them are really hard to find these days, especially fresh, if you want to try them. But they do list them, and they're usually things that are pretty well distributed across the country if you wanted to try to find something to try.
And the beer trap's a good place usually to find.
Beer Trap does a pretty good job, and they curate. They may not have the one listed, but they probably have one close for just about everything. And Kevin, if he's working, will be able to tell you what to try. And they do a pretty good. I won't say they don't miss, but they do a pretty good job of making sure your own beer doesn't stay on the shelf. More so than the other places. All right, so when you're scoring, we typically try to stay above an 18. Some competitions below 13. We even try to stay above 18, just to be nice. But really, it kind of breaks it into 5 categories. And if you look at the score sheet, it's listed at the bottom what the score ranges are for each thing. So that's how you can sort of start gauging in your mind: is this an outstanding beer, which would only be the best of the best of the best, right? 45 or above. Everything's at 50. By the way, I probably could have said it earlier. Or is it excellent, meaning that it's really, really good and it's got just about everything right. Maybe there's just a little bit of tweak that could make it pop a little more. Maybe there's just a minor fault here or there, very minor. Then you're going to be in that 38 to 44 range. Then it drops down to very good, which tends to mean there's some sort of a flaw. Typically a stylistic flaw, like maybe it's a little too malty, or maybe the hops are a little grassy or something instead of being fresh, or something of that nature. Not too off-putting, not so far off style you don't know what it is, but enough that it's trash. After that you fall into fair, which is...
I think you're missing good.
We are missing good. I'll report that back to my editor. There should be a good category. Good category would be that there's some sort of a non-insignificant flaw, right? So this would be like, well, it's supposed to have been an IPA, but it's black. That's the wrong color, right? Or like, like something that's just like way over too sweet, or maybe it's or it could be an actual flaw. Like maybe it's got the acid, or maybe it's got TMS, or maybe it's got sour, which should be, right? Something like that. Or if you're getting sour, it's probably more in the fair category because now you're getting contamination type problems. Again, we try to stay off anything lower than like an 18, just because it doesn't do anybody any good to get somebody ridiculously stupid low scores. And if you get an 18, that's enough to know that it was pretty bad and you may get some work to do.